Hi guys, it's Crystal DeFeo with Katie Cochen. I wanted to hop on here and do something a little different. I have a 15-minute recap. I can hopefully get it done in 15 minutes. Just to recap on yesterday's amazing live, I had some technical difficulties, unfortunately. And so although I did keep the live and I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Caroline Itzkovitz, I was unable to record it and unable to get certain people into the group. So this is my point in doing this today, so that, again, you can just hop on real quick and get a short recap because it was awesome. And we ended up discussing the topic of food affecting our mood, which I thought is extremely important, especially for me. I definitely have had some challenges in the last 6 weeks. I did a little challenge and some things came up, and I've learned even more about my body and things in this time period that I've literally did not know before. So I'm hoping you can get some takeaways. And at the end, I plan on sharing a lot of Dr. Caroline's takeaways as well, because she offered a lot of insight. So I did take some notes and I wanted to hop on and make sure that you could at least gain some insight from her perspective as well. So just a quick disclaimer, this is in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, the month of May, and I continue to come on as much as I can to support you guys in different areas, food being one of them. Next, I will say I am not a medical doctor, and Dr. Caroline's expertise is in mental health as well, not a medical doctor. So if you do have medical concerns or any of the suggestions we give you could potentially conflict with medical advice of your doctor, please do not take any action until you speak to your PCP. I just don't want anyone confusing our expertise with, any medical advice. They're just suggestions, and honestly, a lot of these things you can Google yourself, but it's just reiterating the really important takeaways and also shifting your perspective a little bit. So with that being said, the topic does discuss our mind-body connection and our unhealthy relationship with food that we might have, and how that all impacts our mood. So that's really what we're going to take a look at today. So I put this little visual together since I had some time, hoping that it would help instead of just me ranting. So what are signs of an unhealthy relationship? I think that this is something that people don't take the time to consider sometimes, because things come very habitual over time. And it's super helpful to take a little step back and decide for ourselves if we need to make some changes due to some of these major points. So these signs consist of punishing yourself in any means with food, or restricting your diet, even neglecting, like just not eating all day, which also causes, that binge effect. I'm hungry all day, I'm not taking care of my diet, and then I just kind of binge at night. And that leads to the next point of overeating. And another unhealthy sign of a negative relationship with food is comfort eating. I'm only really eating unhealthy when I'm experiencing depression, stress, anxiety, and we all relate to that in some shape or form. So that's another indicator. The next is late night snacking, where I might have had an appropriate amount of meals throughout the day, but for some reason, the clock strikes midnight, or, that particular moment in the evening where we just have these intense cravings. And I can pinpoint exactly why that happens at that time of night for some people, myself included, but just know that the recommendation typically is to not eat after 8 o'clock, or eat 3 hours before your actual bedtime. And although our body still digests food when we are sleeping, the digestive tract moves a lot slower. So when people eat later, that may result in heartburn, indigestion, acid reflux, and things like that. And honestly, that was a learning point for me, because I feel like when we were younger, we don't really take that into account, but the older we get, the later we eat, these things definitely become more apparent. So we'll talk about cravings later and how to combat that, but that's definitely another huge sign of having an unhealthy relationship with food. So again, feel free to take a little picture of this, but we need to start addressing these areas, and I can definitely relate to a few of those. So what does a healthy relationship with food look like? It's definitely learning to listen to your body. I definitely have learned throughout this 6-week challenge that there were major shifts in my diet and major things within my diet that I had to change, even exercise, because our bodies are different and things change. So we have to learn how to listen to our bodies and adapt to whatever it's telling us. And that's really, really hard to do. So a lot of the times we end up ignoring these things. So it's important, if you're experiencing anything that you're not used to, that was never an issue before, or that's really impacting your mood now, that you start to, write them down, just kind of lock them in so that we can reflect on them and maybe talk to your PCP or make some shifts, because adapting is crucial. We cannot ignore those things. So definitely listen to our bodies. The next is, again, getting medical advice and following it. A lot of the time we jump on the internet and start Googling stuff, bloat, gas, indigestion, weight loss, all these things. And then we come out feeling way worse with all these other diagnoses and things that could be wrong with us. But it's really important to see somebody and make sure we stay on top of our exams and our physicals and all those things, because our bodies do change and our symptoms are exactly that. They're signaling that something is not right and that we need to change something. The next is not emotionally eating, and that goes back to the comfort food we talked about. So a healthy relationship would be not eating unhealthy when things go wrong or when things are going bad, and using or practicing self-control. And this is really, really hard, but if we can learn to understand that our brains are so powerful and we really do have the power to react differently and cope differently when things are not going the best. So instead of taking it out on our bodies and eating horrible and then in turn feeling even worse after, really slowing this down and encouraging ourselves, like we don't have to use food as a mechanism. Next is not eating past dinner hours. Also adapting to diets based on your nutritional needs. So I think a lot of denial comes in here, when we hear caffeine isn't working or doing the same thing that it did for me in the past, or alcohol, I can't process that anymore, or gluten, I have this allergy and I'm no longer able to, all those things come into play. And it's really important that instead of fighting against our bodies and the reactions that it's having, that we just educate ourselves and adapt. Adapting is key. So I think people think that, taking more things out of your diet is really a punishment, but we have the means to substitute, right? And we don't know until we try other things or have alternative ways of combating this. So that point right there is huge. And then the last one is eating foods that positively trigger responses in our brain. This is really important because there's almost like a false reward response that happens with a lot of things that we ingest. So drugs and alcohol, lots of sweets, junk food, processed food, all of that still has a chemical reaction in our bodies, and rightfully so, triggers our responses in our brain. And it feels good, it tastes good, all those signals are firing, but it's really not contributing to the essential nutrients and things that we actually need to perform and function in a great way. So that's something that we'll talk about in a little bit. So I'm gonna, hopefully this stuff's not blocking. Here we go. I wanted to move on to really target anxiety and depression for a minute, because I want you guys to realize we have more control over this than we think. Whether you come from a family of that, or it's something you struggled with your whole life, those are all definitely things that we have to work around. But I think it's really important that we start taking a look at how our diet, or our food, is negatively impacting it. And that's really important. So I have 3 neurotransmitters on here you guys have definitely heard of, maybe not GABA so much, but the serotonin, the dopamine, the GABA, these are all chemical messengers in our body, and they come in different forms, whether it be amino acids, hormones, and things like that. So when any of those, the point is they're naturally produced in our bodies, right? Certain levels of them. And when we manipulate that or have large amounts of things over time that are not considered healthy, it depletes those natural processes from taking place. So we might have a deficiency in GABA. We might end up with a deficiency in serotonin or a deficiency in dopamine, and all those things trigger our mental health problems. So GABA is a great example of this. This is the neurotransmitter or amino acid responsible for relaxation. And if we don't have sufficient levels of this, we may be very, very anxious. So there are people that, turn to benzodiazepines, Xanax, and things like that to calm them down, when that in fact tricks the brain. The brain ends up not producing this naturally in the amounts that it's supposed to, and we become dependent on things like that. So I just want to encourage you. Medications are necessary in certain situations, but this is just encouraging you that if we take a look at these areas that I'm pointing out, we have a natural ability to help our bodies get back to, their natural states in some ways. So ways to improve your GABA levels so that they increase versus get depleted are to improve our diet, which we're talking about, increase exercise, meditate, and even take GABA supplements, which you can easily Google and talk to your medical provider about. We want to decrease our intake of caffeine, which triggers our anxiety, junk food, alcohol, all those things. So not to say that we can't have it. I love different forms of caffeine. I love junk food when it's my cheat days or when I'm like craving things, and I drink socially here and there. But the point is, when we start to just realize, like with age, some of these things really can be substituted, eliminated, or reduced. It's beneficial. And then on the right, I have a bunch of foods that we quickly ran over yesterday, but yogurt, oranges, anything citrusy, walnuts, nuts are always positive, spinach, broccoli, sweet potatoes, beans, brown rice, shrimp, soy proteins, and things like that are all proven to increase our GABA levels in some way. And I think that's awesome, because a lot of this, most people are already incorporating in their diet. So it's really important to understand that that's only helping you to improve these in this area. So we're going to move on now to serotonin, which is considered our happy hormone. And usually people that have a deficiency with this are really majorly depressed and have like mood disorders and things like that. So again, if you see a psychiatrist or on medication, always follow psychiatric and medical advice. But again, these are different foods that could help increase this neurotransmitter or hormone in your body. And I think that it's awesome to just review. So it's important to note that serotonin is made from an amino acid called tryptophan. And if you do struggle with depression, you can benefit from an increase in tryptophan. So the foods below, some of them have, they're loaded with that very amino acid, which is awesome. So it's also important to note that serotonin levels don't just impact our mood, but also could impact, if we have a deficiency in it or are eating things that aren't contributing to it, it could affect our sleep and our memory. And so the foods that I pointed out here, again, seeds and nuts, and it calls out, pumpkin, squash, etc. Meat, certain meats, seaweed, soy foods. Spinach is apparently loaded with tryptophan. Egg whites, when people always push the egg whites. Crabs, fish, halibut specifically, cheese, reduced fat cheese, pork, duck, lamb, beef, chicken, turkey, shellfish. So again, there's always benefits to being vegan, vegetarian, etc., have a plant-based diets, but these are just specific to this particular hormone and what it impacts within our mood, depression specifically. Excuse me. So next, I have a continuation of some additional foods that can contribute to increased serotonin. So those include anything high in omega-3 fatty acids, which includes fish, again, seafood, more nuts, plant oils, and fortified foods, such as certain cereals, milk, eggs, and soy beverages. So that's all important. And we're going to move on now to dopamine. So you guys often hear about this one a lot. And this is the neurotransmitter or hormone that is responsible for our reward and motivation. So eating certain foods do lead to the release of this. And this chemical is the feel-good response that flows through our bloodstream. Dopamine is super important to our emotional responses in different situations and is the reason that we are able to experience feelings of pleasure or pain. So the reason why this gets distorted is because there are a lot of unhealthy things that do make us feel pleasure, that cause pleasure and eliminate pain and things like that. And too much of anything at the end of the day is not good for you. But, you know, the things that we typically go to for pleasure, reward, etc., drugs, the alcohol, sex, gambling, all these things, they're not necessarily healthy, you know, when we're getting to a point of abusing them and things like that. So again, our brain, if we're using those things to constantly reinforce reward, it leads us down a very dark path. So the ultimatum to this is obviously being mindful of those behaviors and whether or not they're healthy or unhealthy, and then incorporating the following into our diets. So more meats. This is like protein central over here. A lot of protein and meats help with the increase or influx of dopamine. So we have beef, chicken, turkey, pork, more fish. Again, amino acids that can trigger the release of dopamine as the food's digesting it. Other things, avocados, nuts, more nuts, beans, seeds, pumpkin, sea flour, sesame seeds, vegetables, and things like that. So you notice a lot of the fruits aren't on here. Not to say that fruits aren't great. You should always incorporate them in your diet, fruits and vegetables. But the thing is, fruit's very high in sugar. And with sugar, you know, you have crashes. It affects all type of organs if consumed too much and things like that, and obviously does not help with weight loss. So you just got to eat sweets in moderation, and then of course natural food, nothing processed. And if you do, just consider maybe cutting it back and not eating, you know, fast food or processed food 24/7. I did throw on here that cheese and chocolate are both good, according to research that will help improve dopamine, but of course in moderation. So yesterday's conversation, we did address a lot of barriers. You know, people on the call had concerns. You know, all of this is really important. It all sounds beneficial, but I'm struggling with these things. Throughout my 6-week challenge, just to be transparent, there are certain things that I had to give up that were making my digestive system really irritated, affecting my just day to day. So I did have to eliminate, just to give you an example, a lot of different carbs and substitute, you know, instead caffeine. I did suffer from migraines, and a lot of people do drink caffeine to avoid them, but it does trigger migraines and headaches as well. So, and we did talk about that on the call. So just the alcohol consumption, you know, just not having to drink every weekend or certain days of the week, like all of these things are gradual changes, and they don't have to be a lifetime or a lifestyle, but it definitely, when you see what your body's capable of and what you can give up and how it makes you feel, the power is yours. So I just want to reiterate that. We were talking about just having to adapt. That's a challenge for a lot of people, just listening to your body. But adapting, again, it takes time. Change takes time, and you eventually can adapt. And they say any change usually, and there's different stats on this, but I'm a firm believer that if you practice anything for over 20 days, even past 30, that it does become a new habit, and not all habits are bad. So if we can replace our negative ones with positive ones, it's definitely a reality. The next thing is cultural norms. We had, a concern with, in my culture, we eat this, we eat that, the way you cook certain foods, maybe, frying tastes better than baking, and just all these things. Even, if your spouse or your children have different lack thereof diet restrictions and can eat certain things, or eat more frequent, just like, how do we navigate that in a home where now we're trying to be intentional and shift things, but the other people require, you to cook for them or prefer certain things that, are a trigger for you. So I can say for cultural norms that, again, we can grow up in certain households, endure certain things. It could be generational, it could be, preferences, learned things. But at the end of the day, the power is yours to make any kind of change and to set boundaries. You may want this, but I can't provide that for you right now. You may need this, but I'm not going to be around you when or I'll substitute this for that. Like, just having that boundary, that communication, and the perspective that although it's something you're used to, and although it's cultural, that you have the means to change what doesn't benefit you. And the boundaries also tie in with kids and people just needing things and wanting things that you can't condone in. So that takes practice, but you just need to know that you're capable. The next is medical issues. That always complicates diets. If you're diabetic, your sugar's dropping and you need sugar, or there's a lot of different things. But again, seek medical advice and attention, and there are ways to substitute. We can still get sugar in different ways, without eating, 20 cookies, we could eat 10. So just different ways to substitute and moderate. The next is remote working or staying at home. And that, for me, I can tell you right now, definitely gained 12 pounds in 2 years. And for certain people, that may or may not sound like a lot of weight, but like wherever your comfort weight is, that could be drastic for people depending on your BMI, your height, all those things. So I can honestly say that COVID is not an invalid excuse. It's very much so. Like, your routines disrupted, being remote, your exercise opportunities, all of that. So now that we know the effects that it can have and that it has had, just incorporating, getting out the house, making plans. If you have the option to be hybrid at work, taking advantage of that. And this 6-week challenge reminded me that I can get back to meal prepping. Even though I'm home, I can still meal prep on a Sunday and have my meals lined up. Being remote doesn't dictate healthy eating and healthy portions. So just some ideas. The cravings, again, they creep up for everyone at different times, but just to be mindful of what those cravings are and how long they last, so you know how to combat them. When I was an addiction counselor, I used to always tell my clients that the easiest ways to combat them were escaping certain situations, again, substituting, distracting yourself, healthy, obviously in a healthy way, just eliminating. And so there was actually, there's just like an acronym. It was like delay, like putting things off. Most cravings, depending on what it is, tend to subside in as little as 3 minutes, up to 5 minutes. So if you could delay, escape the situation, accept that, you know what, I do have this craving, and just embrace it, we can better learn how to manage it. Distract, I already said, and substitute. So those were the 5. So write those bad boys down and just practice one. Habits, again, I already mentioned that they can definitely break as little as between 20, 30 days, as long as you keep consistent. That's really important. And lastly, I can't get rid of the gut, I'm losing hope. Like, there are things that I'm doing and I'm not seeing change quick enough. And this was definitely a barrier that I had, with my new challenges, or my new goals, and I had people, encouraging me, you might see inches before pounds. your mood before physical, like your emotional state getting better before your physical, just different things. And we are really hard on ourselves and we want instant results right away, or we want to quit. So I'm just encouraging you that, you know, you get to your goal quicker by not giving up. You don't get there quicker by giving up. So I definitely did not put what's the point on there. Was the point. It's okay. It's just a recap, guys. Moving too quick. So gut health, I wanted to throw a separate slide on here, particularly for gut health, because, you know, when we say we're not losing the gut, it takes way more than just running, cardio, and the gym. You know, it's a lot of it is based on our diet, and most bacteria is found in our gut. We have certain foods and alcohol that actually rip or tear your gut lining, which causes leakage, and the leakage results in bloating, gas, cramps, food sensitivity, aches, pains, all those things. So if you're anybody, I'm not saying you have gut lining issues, but if you're anybody who has those ongoing concerns right there, then it's worth, you know, checking it out with your doctor, or kind of reflecting on what your diet looks like, what your diet and exercise looks like. So ways to improve our gut health, and I wish we learned this in high school, is certain probiotics, using plant-based food, incorporating that into your diet. Again, fruits, veggies, beans, whole grain, fermented foods that have healthy yeast in it, like yogurt. And unhealthy food, again, can affect us negatively, not just in the mental realm, as we've been discussing, but medically as well, you know? So I would need like a whole nother live on that, food and medical concerns such as cancer, but we're not going to go there. So that's the recap. I wanted to close out with a message from Dr. Caroline Iskovich. She was amazing yesterday, and some of the things she highlighted, and they might be consistent with some things I already mentioned, but one, don't be judgmental with other people's lifestyle changes or your own. You know, invite it, embrace it. If you don't believe it, you don't have to accept it, but just be mindful that being judgmental doesn't make the process any smoother. Two, balance, balance, balance. You know, the whole point in a lifestyle change with our food and things that we put into our bodies is not to punish us. Again, we don't want to restrict, punish, feel worse, or dread this whole process, but just find a balance of things, the good and the bad. That helps. Three, do not restrict, again, or punish yourself when it comes to food. Four, again, we talked a lot about substitution, elimination. So Dr. Caroline shared with us that she changed her diet after several years to just being a pescatarian, only eating seafood and things like that, and also gave up alcohol. So she has been sober for about 6 years and counting, and that significantly helped her in every facet of her life, which I thought was super commendable, because you know, that's something, it's challenging. And don't be the person, if you hear that somebody's giving up alcohol and they actually don't have a, you know, addiction issue, that it's not like the end of the world. Like, there are really people now that are starting to see the benefits of not consuming drugs and alcohol, even socially, that, you know, just made it a lifestyle. So there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, we should encourage it. 5 is making changes and be mindful of the benefits over time. You know, she said you don't necessarily have to journal how things are affecting you in a good way when you make changes, but just be mindful of those changes when they're made. Like, if giving up gluten really helped you feel good for a month, then, you know, there's always goals around that where you can incorporate that in certain areas. 6, just because you maintain a healthy weight does not mean that your habits are good or that your relationship with food is healthy. And that's important for not only us to understand, but for us to know about other people. Like, we might see that someone has it all together on the outside, but, you know, their weight, everything, but they're eating, you know, fast food every day of the week. So just being mindful that one necessarily doesn't always reflect the other. 7 is listening to your body, which I also already shared some light on, and I totally agree with. 8, she shared her favorite healthy snack. You know, there was some discussions about not knowing what to eat and not preferring healthy food, like healthy snacks. And of course, some of them really are bland and not good, but she found her niche, and that was a rice cake. She loads it with sunflower seed butter, bananas, and some chocolate. So that's, what she found to be fulfilling and really healthy. So, there's ways to do that. She's sharing it by posting on her YouTube channel, but if you search Google or Pinterest and things like that, there's just really creative ideas out there, and how to even incorporate some of the preferences you already have with just better options. And 9, remember that change does take time. You have to remain consistent, and mindfulness is key. Just being mindful with your body, being mindful with the relationship that you have with all these things, and being mindful of your new goals and your progress. So that was the recap. I really, really hope that you took something beneficial from this. And I'm really excited that I even had the opportunity to come back on, the time and the energy to come back on and show up. So again, thanks for tuning in to Katie Coaching, and I'll be on again live next week to wrap up Mental Health Awareness Month, and then look forward to seeing you guys in the months to come, as I will commit to continuing to do at minimum bi-weekly lives. So thank you again for your time, and I'll see you shortly.